Good day, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to the Discovering Bigfoot podcast. Kyle's on vacation. Not really. I'm just going to do a couple shows here. I'm doing director's commentary of Joe Rogan versus Jeff Meldrum because I have quite a bit of knowledge of Jeff Meldrum. I'm the man who took him out and showed him a Sasquatch in the movie Discovering Bigfoot, and this interview was before that. So a very excellent interview. This is part 2. Part 1 is already up on my YouTube channel. So we're going to continue on with that amazing interview. Starting off with the part where we ended off was talking about Joe Rogan, talking about the Patterson footage. So let's get straight into it right now.
Actually disturbs me. Here's something you said that unfortunately disturbs me. Okay. And that is, you talked about the Patterson footage as if it wasn't BS. That Patterson footage, to me, looks like a blurry video of a dude in a monkey suit.
Well, if it looks that blurry to you, then you haven't seen the best renditions, the best copies of
the
film.
Are they online?
There's one that's online.
What's the best one?
Well, I'm not sure if I can call it off the top of my head, but
the producer of the show just looked at me like, "Oh no, here we go."
Yeah,
because he knows I got a thing for the Patterson footage.
Well, one of the things.
We're fine.
Yeah.
We got a lot of good stuff already.
One of the things that's interesting is every time the film is assailed by a critic or a pretender to be the man in the suit, such as Bob Hieronymus,
right?
It seems that new technologies have become available in the intervening period, and they're applied. One of those was digital imagery. By scanning that film digitally, the image could be the color could be channel split. We know that the lens that was used was not corrected for chromatic aberrations, so different colors refracting differentially through that lens.
Boy, you sure talk a good game, mister. Chromatic aberrations. How dare you?
When you split, just pop a mushroom and you'll understand what I'm talking about here with these.
Okay.
Rainbow colors. We split the colors, we can subtract away the least clear channels and just limit the image to the sharpest imagery. And I tell you, you see that image as you've never seen it before. And there are details. I'm working right now with a gentleman who is a former Hollywood makeup artist and costume fabricator, Bill Munns. He's also very good with computer graphics, with photogrammetry, and we're doing some really interesting work on the film. But when you stop and think about the materials that were available in 1967, they didn't have four-way stretch fur. They just had fur cloth, which when you make a costume out of it, even a padded costume, it looks like pajamas. It doesn't look like a fitted costume.
It doesn't look real to me. That thing does not walk like a gorilla. It walks like somebody who's late for a meeting.
Not only that,
it's not a gorilla.
There's the context. There's something about human beings where when a human being is wearing a suit, or you see a human being that's pretending to be something that they're not, it doesn't seem right. They walk like a human. You see that thing walk, that to me feels like a human being. I've seen chimps walk on 2 legs. I've seen gorillas. I've seen primates move. They move differently than people do. They have a completely different anatomical structure. They feel different when you watch them. This feels like an asshole pretending to be Bigfoot.
Well, let me just play Bigfoot advocate here. There is the possibility, though. I mean, if you're shooting a Bigfoot hoax video, you're gonna walk better than that. Whoever did this is it's like he's in between takes going to use the bathroom or something.
This is just a dude. This is Bob Hieronymus, the guy who says it's him. He's just a guy who was friends with Bob Patterson. And we've already been over the fact that Patterson wrote a bad check to pay for the very camera that did. He's a shady character. He wasn't exactly the salt of the earth.
But if you're gonna
he went looking. I'm sorry, but he went looking for Bigfoot and then found Bigfoot. That's sound.
Roger Patterson may not have been, but Bob Gimlin sure was. And this is old news, guys. Jeff Meldrum at this point, I think through all these people critiquing him in these significant ways, he's actually going around now, and I got to make a little segment or maybe even a documentary about it, where he proves so significantly that the things that are going on in that Patterson footage, it's so conclusively legitimate and real, it's ridiculous. And researchers like myself that have gone out there, and they're seeing the mid-tarsal joint that we see. We're seeing the alignment of the way the feet move in conjunction with its forward bipedal motion. All these things, human beings don't do that. And there's no way that Bob Gimlin and Roger Patterson could have had any knowledge of that at all. There's things in the anatomy of the Sasquatch. Her quadricep is blown. A question I asked myself is, why didn't she kick it into high gear and bail the hell out of there? She had a blown quadricep. And we're actually seeing that physiologically move correctly, where the pressure goes on and it bulges, and the pressure comes off and the bulge goes away. They can't do that in today's day and age. So, and that's something else to think about, is people talk, oh, we could do that, we could do that. There have been lots of people that have tried to redo the Patterson footage and completely failed. And we're talking with today's modern technology. So never mind the fact that, again, you have so much, the blown quad, the mid-tarsal joint, the alignment of the way that she walks. And then you match her up with my footage. She looks like the exact same being. He's complaining because they're moving bipedally, and that's what a Sasquatch is. They're bipedal, not quadrupeds. And they're actually have to, respect to Joe and this other guy, but they're talking to a professor of anatomy and anthropology, right? Who specializes in bipedal locomotion. And Jeff Meldrum knows the footage is real. I'm going to speak on his behalf. What is he? 99.999999% convinced. He's done the math. He's seen the stats. The footage is real. Have a nice day. And what's good about this is Joe Rogan is consistent. Now he sees my footage. He calls the Patterson footage, since they're swearing, I'm going to swear. He calls it fake as fuck. And guess what he said when he saw my footage when Survivor Man showed it to him? That's fake as fuck. This guy's fake as fuck. So we go from there.
So ridiculous.
But if you're going to take the time to go out in the forest with whatever that big suit is and to film yourself walking through the woods to make a hoax Bigfoot video, you're going to try to walk more like a gorilla or some supernatural thing. The stride of that thing is so bad and seems so fake that it makes me believe that it's real.
Doesn't make any sense.
I got baked one night at the ice house, and I was convincing myself for 20 minutes. I mind fucked myself, and I completely convinced myself that it was real. And then I woke up. I was like, that's ridiculous. That's a guy in a monkey suit.
And it's ridiculous that he says it's not real.
Okay, we'll get to that. But this film, have you ever looked at it and thought it was fake? Never.
Well, I mean, I've questioned whether it was authentic or not, but I've never come to a conclusion that it must have been faked.
It's the holy grail of Bigfoot footage.
Agreed. Yeah, but that's not the reason
No, I'm not saying it is, but it is.
Yes. Oh, sure. It has set the bar, I guess. That's why I would rather look at it that. It sets the bar as high as it is for photographic evidence, and anything that falls short of it, since we're still debating it, is certainly not going to tip the scales.
But if it was fake, it would be devastating.
But it's not.
No,
it's
it
real.
wouldn't, because we still have this dozens and dozens, hundreds of footprints that fill my lab that
thousands of
form,
eyewitness
the
accountings.
basis of my conclusion.
But I would think it would just be devastating just because people would be so upset that they were claiming that it wasn't real. Or that it was real, rather.
Sure.
That would be, ego-wise, that would be a crusher.
Yeah,
especially to such a fringe belief anyway, right?
Sure. But if all I had to go on was the correlated footprints from that film side, that would be enough to convince me that it's authentic.
Really? The correlated footprints were very good?
Well, yeah. This example that's so...
Is that one from Bluff Creek?
That is.
So that's from the Patterson footage?
That is. Mm-hmm.
And that exhibits that whole mid-tarsal break that you talk about?
That's right. And you can see that kinematic, that action in the foot of the film subject. So it's
what it looks to me when I watch it? It looks like a guy walking with ice skates on. You know when you have ice skates, you can't walk right?
Well, that's that effect of the compliancy of the gait. They don't walk, you said it doesn't look like a chimp, it doesn't look like a gorilla, and that's absolutely true, because gorillas and chimps are quadrupeds, they're not bipeds.
Well, actually, I said it looks like a person, is what I said. I said when you watch a chimp move and you watch a gorilla move, they don't look like human beings. This looks like a human being.
Right, and that similarity is largely due to the fact that this is another biped that uses a mode of locomotion that's very similar, but not identical to our own. And
not
one of those
identical.
differences, you pointed out with the ice skating, is that effect of the compliant gait. One of the things you often notice in many of these footprints is
the compliant gait is something. So Jeff Meldrum, on 3 days on expedition with me, saw a Sasquatch. I found the trackway after, and most importantly, the Sasquatch that he saw had a compliant gait that he saw at about 30 yards. Eyewitness a Sasquatch walking right in front of him, and the trackway was again exactly the same as what the Patterson thinks. It's an alignment, the spacing, the weight, the foot size, the mid-tarsal joint, and the compliant gait. Coincidence? I don't think so.
Compared to a human, there's not a real distinctive heel impression and a ball impression, which is the result of our arched foot that concentrates pressure under those ends of the arch. So we have a heel strike and a toe off when we walk. This creature, because of its great mass, has to distribute its weight over a larger surface area. So it walks more flat-footed without an arch. And then you've got the action, that mid-tarsal break. You can see here's the deepest part of the footprint right there. And then the pressure ridge, the pressure release that's pushed up behind it. But in order to also reduce those reaction forces, that impact of the step, it walks with a slightly bent ankle, knee, and hip. And so instead of the head bobbing along like we walk when we're walking briskly down, the sidewalk,
He's smooth.
Exactly. I've had eyewitnesses when they thought it was either levitating, floating through the air. One described it. He said it looked like it was on a bicycle because its head was just moving horizontally through space as it was walking so smoothly.
Wow.
Yes.
So that's an interesting distinction. But to my eye, that confirms the credibility rather than refutes it.
Agreed.
That's interesting. Still looks like a dude in a monkey suit, though.
Well, it does at first glance, but
No,
when
it
you start
doesn't.
looking
No,
at
it
things
doesn't.
like, you're a bodybuilder, the attachment of the trapezius.
Oh, yeah, I am. Just to let you know.
The attachment of the trapezius on the back of the head. You can see the traps come down to those massive shoulders. You can see the definition of the deltoid.
Or you see a dude who has football pads on inside a gorilla suit.
What?
No.
Well, I
Just
don't
a little
know.
bit of that.
I gotta tell
Come
you,
on.
you have such a smooth voice and such an easy way of talking about this. You could make me believe in leprechauns, unicorns.
You mean you don't?
That would be
Look,
fantastic.
it's easy to get me to start believing, man. I start looking at it over and over again. I've been watching the video the entire time we're talking. I'm like, maybe, man. Nobody would want it to be real more than me. That's why it disturbs me that I think it's fake. Because, man, I would want that to be real so bad. Almost as much as you. You first, me, like...
Well,
second.
one of the interesting things, Roger's no longer here to defend himself, but Bob Gimlin, his partner, is, and Bob was kind of pulled in on this. He was the friend who had the necessary horse trailer and equipment and so forth to make this kind of happen, and he got pulled in. He was interested. He heard the stories that Roger told him and went out riding with him every now and again over by Mount St. Helens and Mount Adams near where they lived in Yakima. But they had gone down there specifically because there had been footprints discovered a month earlier. A long line of tracks of 3 individuals, a 15-inch, which I'm convinced was her, and then a 13 and a 11-inch, which probably were juvenile offspring of hers that were just in tow. They'd been down there for 2 weeks already. It was not like they just went down and
2 whole weeks? Wow, they put in the time. They really deserve finding the first video footage ever of a giant ape-like man thing.
Well, it's dumb luck. There's always a certain element of dumb luck or yeah, of course, you can play it off either side of it, but you gotta weigh the, even if you dismiss it on the basis, or if you hedge on the basis of those circumstantial evidences, then you got to account for the film. That was the year that Planet of the Apes came out. Now, that was the state of the art in the industry for costumes. That has never been repeated in the industry. We quickly passed costumes, and if we were going to do it now, we'd do it with CGI. No one would even tackle that with a costume.
All right, let me play devil's advocate real quick. Even the really good footage, let's be honest, it's blurry. If you went to see a movie and it looked like that, you would be pissed.
Sure.
You'd
Well,
be
it's
like,
only,
what kind of shit
Mine's
movie
not.
are you making?
Mine's
I can't even
not.
see what's going on. This is all blurry. The trees, you can't see the leaves. Everything is like washed out.
Mine's
it's
not.
very difficult to distinguish
No, mine's not.
really closely.
See, and this is the thing, right? People bitch, it's not clear enough, and then I give him clear footage, and he goes, "Oh, it's fake as F." Well, what the hell? Like, there's no in between with people that are having these discrepancies. And again, with the evidence of the footprints, like what makes this so amazing, so fantastic, is the fact that the tracks were discovered, and these are amazing. What an incredible trackway right where the footage was shot. That's absolutely astonishing. I've never been able to do that, not even close. I do my research in the Rocky Mountains. Good luck finding tracks amongst all those rocks and hard terrain that we go through. So really Frustrating. You give people what they want, they complain. It's like you just can't win. You know what I should be doing? I should take my footage to Joe Rogan, blur it up just a bit, but not quite enough. Find that equilibrium to make the haters and the people that complain happy.
Exactly what you're looking at.
Well, there's enough detail that you can see the deep set eyes, you can see the nose, you can see the split of the mouth, you can see the. Well, no, they're there.
See something going on.
No.
Well, what about Bob Hieronymus, the guy who says that he was in the suit, and the guy who, when he walks, looks like Bigfoot?
Well, he doesn't actually.
No, he doesn't.
He doesn't.
Nah, he doesn't.
Like it. His limb proportions are completely off.
Right.
You know,
So he's not wearing a suit.
Here's a funny little telltale sign.
Okay.
You notice that when he tries to imitate the Patterson film, he walks like an Egyptian. He turns his backhand back really far. There was a frame from the Patterson film that was widely published sometime after. It was actually a copy that was in the possession of Rene de Hinden, and it had a little blemish on the copy that made it look like there was almost like a thumb and a forefinger making an OK sign, that made it look like that hand was turned back like this. That's an artifact of the copy. The hand is actually positioned like this. The palm doesn't face backwards, but Hieronymus, trying to exemplify, trying to emulate the posture, exaggerates this Egyptian hand posture
That was
based
actually
on
an
that
artifact.
widely publicized.
Sounds to me like someone's got a little confirmation bias.
I don't look.
Well,
Someone wants it to be real a little bit.
No, it's
little bit.
It,
No,
it
these are
sounds that
facts.
way because
These
I'm
are
throwing out
facts.
things that are based on very exhaustive evaluation of the film.
The exhaustive evaluation of Bob Hieronymus's walk like an Egyptian hands.
Oh, sure, yeah.
I'm
I've
gonna-
looked about everything that he's allowed to be replicated or published. Yeah.
Can I throw my pinky in with a doctor here? And
Please do.
I just want to say, look, here's the thing. If I'm going out in the woods and I've got this futuristic Bigfoot suit and horses and a camera, I'm going to walk in a weirder way. I'm not going to walk.
That's you, buddy.
Right, but
Me, I would walk exactly like this guy in the monkey suit.
you would walk like that.
Yeah.
I would never know, number one.
Obviously,
about
Joe
the
doesn't
head
believe it's real
movement
for a
thing. I wouldn't
second.
know that
Calls it a monkey
this was
suit.
some kind of crime.
And that's not a monkey suit. Show me. There's never been, even today. If you spent, I've seen them online, $15,000-$20,000. They're not anywhere near what, and they're trying to make a Sasquatch. They're not doing a monkey suit. In 1967, they only had monkey suits. Nobody even knew about Sasquatch. So calling it a monkey suit is really, it's disrespectful and preposterous.
Primordial thing. So these people seem to have deeply studied it to make something seem so fake.
Or it just walked straight and they filmed it all blurry, and then we add all
not
these
blurry.
things to it.
Sure. Well, yeah. There's.
Why is it exhibiting behavior that's so uncharacteristic of every other Sasquatch sighting? Every single Sasquatch sighting, they're like in the middle of the woods. They don't come out in the open. They don't stand there. And when they walk, why would they walk that way? Why wouldn't it go right back in the woods? Why is it walking diagonally?
Well, when
as
you-
if to give you a nice long view of itself.
Well,
That's
as
a
you
good
got
question.
your camera.
It seems that way.
Seems
but-
staged.
Well, there's several possibilities. Just give you an apologetic.
Okay. First
Set.
one is it's bullshit, right?
First one, well, sure, it's bullshit. But the other is that one of them is that first you have to know the lay of the land there. And we've been to the site, we've surveyed the landmarks, the trees, the stumps, and so forth. This is a very deep canyon with very steep walls at that point. There's a wide girth there because of the flood that essentially scoured out that creek bed and left that very convenient, if you will, sandbar where those beautiful tracks could be laid down. But it made a beeline upstream some distance, crossed the creek, and once it was past that steep narrow, it opened up a bit, and that's where it immediately went up to higher elevation. One explanation that's been offered is that it was, now remember I said that a month earlier there were actually 3 sets of tracks, possibly 2 juveniles. Those aren't obvious here in this footage, and like I said, I'm quite convinced that her tracks match those of the other 15-inch set of tracks. So she's obviously a female, if it's real. And so if she has
breasts,
some
you can
young
see
in tow,
breasts.
one behavior of that exemplifies the maternal instinct is that broken wing syndrome, where the mother walks off nonchalantly to lead the intruders away from the sequestered offspring.
Oh, so the offspring are over here, so she's like making them follow her to leave her offspring alone.
Yeah.
Isn't that an odd thing to do in a place that's filled with predators? And then you're seeing two predators, that's how they do it? They would lead them away like that?
You know, how much of a threat are humans, you know? I mean,
I would think they're a huge threat, which is why Sasquatches are hiding. Otherwise, if they came down and got food from us, we would feed them every day.
Sure.
I mean, I feed squirrels, dude.
Yeah.
You tell me I wouldn't feed a Sasquatch?
She had a blown
Sasquatch
quad.
showed up in the yard?
That's been proven. Her
How
quad
have they
step was
avoided
blown.
trail cams?
Well, there are a lot of animals that are capable of avoiding trail cams. I mean, there's actually a growing literature showing everything from, coyotes, especially other predators like felids that exhibit avoidance behavior, whether it's electronic emissions, whether it's light leakage, whether it's scent, whether it's just the novelty of something on that regularly used trail that wasn't there the day before.
Probably smells like people or something.
Of course.
I had a friend, he's a wildlife biologist. He's been working over in Southeast Asia, and he said recently a BBC crew came over and they wanted to get images of elephants, and they put out 18 trail cams. The elephants found and destroyed over half of them.
Wow.
So,
yeah, elephants are very smart.
Exactly.
It's kind of strange how smart they are.
Yeah, exactly.
But we have no problem locking them up.
Well, yeah, again, but it's a question of, in part, of rarity, of solitarity, and intelligence and behavior and so on.
Isn't it possible that this creature has evolved the ability to hide? Wait, let me ask that again. Isn't it possible that this creature has evolved beyond other beings when it comes to the ability to hide? Maybe whatever this is super advanced in camouflaging itself in a way that we've never seen.
Well, it's possible. I don't think that we really have to resort to extraordinary explanations for it hiding. I mean, other animals are very capable of remaining undetected. It's just a matter of odds. I mean, how many times when you have gone out, or, people, I just drove through Yellowstone, and got caught up in these traffic jams where people would stop to see the bear or the bison. But there are hundreds of bison out there that are never seen, But when you have that many scattered across the landscape, the chances of bumping into one increase. But if you're talking about a very rare animal, something like a wolverine or a fisher or a marten, you can talk to people who have spent lots of time in the woods who have never had a sighting of one of those animals. So it's just, for me, it's a matter of statistics, just probabilities of encountering. But gee, if we don't see something move, a vertical line especially is very cryptic in the woods. We're usually seeing things that are horizontally oriented, like the back of a deer or a bear or whatever. But it's kind of like that closing scene in Harry and the Hendersons, when suddenly
How dare you quote Harry and the Hendersons
That's it.
when you come on a show to talk to us about serious Bigfoot
Everything was so good.
science. By the way, that's a pretty obscure reference, pal, for most normal folks. Most normal folks are not like quoting Harry and the Hendersons. What happened in Harry and the Hendersons?
Well, in the final scene, when Harry's sent back out into the woods, then out from the landscape emerges his whole family, and they were standing there right in front of you, but just because they were still, you didn't see them. And then as soon as they
cute when it's a movie.
Well, right.
But
but there's truth to that. We really pick up our brain zeroes in on a movement. A movement in the, but if it's absolutely
movement, shape,
still,
color,
we have a hard time sometimes.
Like in Predator.
Yeah.
Exactly. How much credence do you give to the idea that they're all over the country?
Oh, very little. Their distribution, again, assuming they exist for a moment, is very ecologically based. So we don't find them in the middle of wheat fields of Kansas or West Texas. We find them where there's sufficient rainfall to support coniferous forests and understory that's productive enough to support a large omnivore. So if you got a guide to mammals and flipped open to American black bear, for example, looked at the distribution, or better yet, flip open to my field guide.
You have a Sasquatch field guide.
I have a Sasquatch field guide.
It's laminated, isn't it?
It's so
waterproof.
Awesome. But there is a
I don't have
if I
it
can find it here. There is a distribution map of a hypothetical distribution.
Where can I get one of those?
Well, I can give you a address to send a check to and get one.
How
Ooh, how
much?
dare you? He just got money out of you.
How much?
Just ganked
This
you
is
for cash.
well with postage it would be $11.50.
I'll take it.
in the United
I'll buy
States.
it for you. Merry Christmas, buddy.
Anyway, but there's a distribution map, and what's interesting is it's very similar to the distribution map for American black bears, because there's another omnivore that needs a certain amount of productive habitat, and there's lots of space on that map where there's no evidence of any Sasquatch
take a look
existing.
So your belief is that you're dealing with the Pacific Northwest primarily, and then possibly a few other spots like Connecticut?
Sure. Well, the backside of the Appalachia. So if you go across the boreal forest of Canada,
Right.
down the backside of the Appalachia, New England states,
Where there's
Connecticut?
black bears, there
Connecticut,
can be
well, could be.
Sasquatch.
That's
Really?
densely populated state.
Yeah,
but,
pretty. Kind of hard to hide
Kinda
if you're a
hard,
giant
yeah.
monkey.
But down the backside of the
They're not
Appalachia,
monkeys.
even eastern Ohio,
Holy
it's
crap.
it's surprising. If
Really?
you've never been there, yeah, there's some support for.
So you believe Ohio, maybe possibly Pennsylvania,
Western Pennsylvania, could
Florida, Skunk Cape?
Sure.
Really?
Some of that. There's a lot of. My experience has been, and for a long time, I simply used the easy caveat that I didn't have the time or resources to consider all the evidence east of the Mississippi. But my experience has been that the data that has come from those areas that might corroborate such sightings is pretty scant, and there's a lot of things that are just not credible whatsoever.
Like meth.
Like meth.
A lot of meth in
Oh, yeah.
Florida. I think if you're seeing
That could
skunk
be.
apes.
Now I want to.
know.
Can you talk a little bit about the way that a Bigfoot smells?
Well, yeah. Oftentimes, in the skunk ape, is a moniker that derives from that supposed stench. But it's interesting when you look at the statistics collated from lots and lots of sightings. A stench is only reported in about 10% of the sightings. That suggests to me that they don't continually smell badly to our nose, but that they're capable of exuding a smell. Great apes, like chimps and gorillas, have very well developed axillary organs. The apocrine sweat glands,
Right.
the things that when we sweat when we're nervous, as opposed to the watery sweat that is used in evaporative cooling. And when animals like gorillas, Diane Fossey, she describes the first time a silverback bluff charged her, came barreling down at her. She hunkered down, averted her gaze, and it stopped just a foot short of her. But she said she was nearly bowled over by this locker room scent that it was emitting.
Oh my God.
And she was probably emitting one by that point too.
Yeah.
Just imagine how horrifying that would be.
Yeah.
You got a giant silverback charging
Yeah,
you, and it
exactly.
gets so close you can smell his stink.
So whether it's fear or tension or intimidation, they're probably capable of exuding that kind of smell under those circumstances.
Just like a skunk.
Just like skunk, sure.
We were in my
Yeah, I
backyard the
guess,
other
I
night,
guess, yeah.
and I had explained to my daughter that you can't get too close to the skunk. There was a skunk wandering in the backyard. We have chickens, and the skunk has found out we have chickens. By the way, skunks are murderers.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, they're very carnivorous. They're predators, and they were looking to kill my chickens. And they actually drink their blood. That's how they get them.
Ah,
They gank their neck and drink their blood. So cute little skunks, Pepe Le Pew.
They are
Yeah,
cute.
not so much. They're little monsters. But I had explained to her, like, I go, if it gets you, the smell is unbelievably bad. And, she's 5. She's like, I don't even know what you're talking about. It doesn't smell at all. I'm like, it can smell. It smells on purpose.
Sure.
That's a weird thing, the ability to spray that stuff on purpose.
Absolutely, yeah.
and they can only do. I heard they can only do it 10 times a year.
Skunks?
Yeah.
Wow.
They can't. They only have a certain amount that they could spray. So whenever they spray, they have to mean it.
The rate of production.
Yeah, what's fascinating is that smell that we can recognize in just small parts per million.
Right.
That's how dogs smell us. Yeah, I mean, not so bad, I'm sure, but they can smell. They have the ability to recognize us the way we can recognize skunks, which is, it really puts it in perspective, because there's very few smells that are like that are squirted out by a small animal that can
Right.
spread for blocks and
yeah,
blocks.
yeah.
You know that when you're driving, you're in your car, you smell it through your vents.
Right.
It's
Right.
It's
interesting.
super powerful.
So mostly Pacific Northwest or anywhere where there's large, dense forests.
Right. Yeah.
Who's the most credible eyewitness that you've ever talked to?
Oh, there have been
question.
several. One that always comes to mind when I'm asked that, though, is a lady by the name of Julie Davis, who had a remarkable encounter in the South San Juans of Colorado. She's a very avid goat packer, and she's hiked the entire Continental Divide Trail through Colorado.
Wow.
And her story was recounted in the Denver Post in a big feature article. And I've spent over a month in the backcountry with her and a couple other researchers, and got to know her very well.
Wow.
And been in her home, heard her recount her recollections over a campfire, and when someone shares that kind of experience, or hers is worth retelling very quickly. She was off trail with her goats and a couple of dogs. The dogs were acting up. She suspected maybe that she was being stalked by a bear, and there still are grizzlies, and supposedly still are grizzlies. This is the area of the so-called ghost grizzlies, where they think they're extinct, and then a hunter shoots one, and it's a female, and she's obviously suckled cubs. So there still are some grizzlies out there, perhaps.
And what part of where is it?
South Colorado Rockies, the Waimanooch country, and the South San Juans. But at one point, her dogs were again acting up. She was kind of on the lookout. She didn't want her dogs to tangle with the bear, so she was taking the dogs towards the tent, and stepped into the tent and got her pepper spray. And suddenly the goats approached the tent. They weren't looking at her, though. They were looking up above the tent. And so she stepped out thinking she was going to confront a bear and have to spray it. And they're standing right behind her tent. So about from me to you, just a small dome tent, is this 8-foot tall, hairy figure locking eyes with her. And this was in the middle of the afternoon in broad daylight, at close quarters. She said it looked at her, it looked at the goats, it looked back at her. I mean, it was apparently fascinated by these funny-looking animals it hadn't encountered before, perhaps. And she said she had a sort of a subliminal impression suddenly that I won't bother you if you won't bother me. And she said that when she had that sense, its demeanor kind of softened. The edge sort of went off. And at that point, a second one that was standing right behind it, a slightly smaller one, peered out from around the bigger one. And they sat and kind of stared at each other for, probably what seemed like an eternity. It was just a few seconds. And then they both turned and they headed off towards the tree line and disappeared.
I'd be like, where are you going?
Yeah, exactly.
Let's talk.
Well,
Come on, I'll show you. Have candy. Have soda.
Have a goat.
She didn't dare tell anyone for years about it because of the fear of the stigma. And
God, I would give $1,000 to know if that's true.
Yeah, exactly.
Not even to experience it myself, just to know that she was telling the truth.
Well, and as I said, it's one thing to, in your position to say, well, yeah.
Sounds very authentic to me.
It couldn't be.
Right.
But when it's someone that you have come to know and you count as a friend, as a close acquaintance, then, you were mistaken. It was just a bear standing upright from 10 feet away.
Right.
You just imagined it, or you've misinterpreted it.
Your brain blew a fuse.
Yeah. Or you're lying to me.
Right.
You're just making this up for attention.
We spoke to one woman Barbara, who had an incredibly compelling story.
Yep.
So I've talked to people that have stories that make you just go, whoa, boy, I wish I knew.
Well, yeah, people are having experiences. Again, it comes back to this issue of how do you interpret those experiences? How credible are they?
That's really got to be where the madness is, because you can't discount unique experiences.
You really can't. You can't. But I always kind of push for the corroboration. I want to see an associated footprint. I want to see a strand of hair that matches that sort of standard, or that.
And that's what we do on my expeditions. Every time there's a sighting or a live interaction, we get out there and we find footprints, we find fresh tree breaks, we hear more movement, and there's always more evidence to substantiate it. And of vital importance with anybody, you get footage of a Sasquatch, get out there, gather some evidence, look for tracks, look for breaks, look for hair, look for more corroborating evidence. Have somebody with you. What did you see? Hey, let's go check it out together. 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, the more corroboration you can get, the better.
That archetype of the hair of Sasquatch, that's kind of the gold standard, you'd say, I guess. Because then there's another dimension to it. That takes some of the subjectivity out of the evaluation of the experience, for me anyway.
Is this your full-time job? Do you?
No. I mean, I teach, I do research, I publish
my
on
full-time job.
hominid evolution and bipedalism. It takes a significant amount, but I see it as one facet, a very complementary facet to my other research. Some of the insights that I've gained from studying carefully the Sasquatch footprints have actually fueled new interpretations of some of the hominid footprint evidence that have.
Jeff Meldrum to date now has the feet as accepted as a scientific reality. So the tracks of Sasquatch are signed off by multiple PhDs as scientific fact that they are from a living hominid that survives in North America. How perplexing is that, right? Science recognizes and accepts the feet as real, just not the rest of the body.
Caused me to advocate some different alternate interpretations of some of that early evidence.
Besides Bigfoot, what are the other Bigfoot-like creatures that you believe possibly exist?
Right. Well, there's the reports of all around the globe of different sorts of things, not all related. Now, interestingly, there's reports of very Sasquatch-like creatures in eastern Russia and China, and even down in Southeast Asia.
Yeren.
In fact, if you go up from Southeast Asia across Myanmar, northeast India, along the foothills of the Himalayas, up around the Pamir and Altai ranges on the border in Mongolia, even as far west as the Caucasus between the Caspian and Black Seas, there are these gigantic reports and evidence of gigantic footprints left by large bipedal creatures very similar to Sasquatch.
They have the same mid-tarsal break in the footprints?
We have a much scanter fossil record. They resemble, one of the tracks from the Caucasus that a researcher, in fact, I'm going to the Caucasus this August to work with this researcher who came back with a footprint that was cast by a villager from a long line of tracks that most of the village witnessed of a big hairy creature that walked through this fallow field. They resemble remarkably the Sasquatch footprints. So this might be the former range of Gigantopithecus or giant Paranthropus or some other hominid. There's the Himalayan Yeti, and there is unfortunately scant evidence for it. I've gone through as systematically as possible and evaluated all the footprint evidence attributed to the Yeti. Much of it's just unintelligible. The snow, the prints have melted out or sublimated, where the snow evaporates at the high altitude. Another significant fraction are bears, absolutely bears. And it boils down to probably two specimens. The famous Shipton photo from the Menlem Glacier back in the 50s.
What's the name of that?
Eric Shipton.
Shipton?
Yep. Mm-hmm. And another one that I find even much more compelling is the McNeely-Cronin footprint, the McNeely-Cronin expedition to the Arun Valley in the Himalayas. Those suggest a creature that's actually probably much more akin to this individual. They exhibit a opposable or a divergent big toe. In fact, the McNeely-Cronin particularly look just like an oversized chimpanzee with short, stout digits. Hold this up again. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you feel like the Yeti might possibly, if it's real, might possibly be a different animal, a different undisclosed, undiscovered primate.
Probably one that's still arboreal, that lives not up in the snowfields, but down in the subtropical to temperate valleys of the high mid-Himalayas, I guess you'd say, like the Arun Valley. Jeff McNeely and Ed Cronin were biologists who were conducting a 2-year biological survey of the wildlife in that area, wildlife and the flora. And so when they woke up one morning and found a line of tracks that came up a very steep slope through 3 feet of snow bipedally on a ridge leading to a pass that they were just about to go over themselves, made a detour, meandered in amongst the brightly colored tents, and then continued on over the pass, and they lost the trail in a rhododendron thicket. But here were these chimpanzee-like, very large chimpanzee-like footprints.
What's your take on aliens or extraterrestrials? Do you believe in UFOs?
Well, and I always eschew that term believe. It doesn't matter if I believe or not, but right. I've not busied myself with the evidence. I saw a UFO, an unidentified flying object myself one time. We were out looking at stars with, on date.
Do you think Bigfoot possibly was in that UFO?
No, I don't think so.
No?
I don't think
You
so.
never know until you go in that
you never
UFO.
know.
Can you imagine
Don't do
that?
it.
What a mind fuck that would be. Bigfoot's from another planet, and he just lands and likes to go for walks through the woods just like everybody else.
No.
All I saw was it was a point of light. You know, when we were kids, we would sleep out on the sun decks and we'd count the satellites as they went over. They had very particular kind of oblique orbits. This thing was going north to south, and which would have been fine, except that it executed 2 right-angle turns in succession. I mean, absolutely right-angle turns, just as sharp as if you put a square up there in the sky. And
Wow.
and so both our jaws dropped. And did you see that? Yeah, I saw.
Maybe that's the government because it's trying to throw you off this Bigfoot thing by making you look even more ridiculous.
This was way before
That's a
that.
good
This
point.
was back
That's
in
funny.
college years.
Maybe they have a time machine
Well-
and they knew that you were going to be one of the most
Well, that's the thing about all
prominent
these
Bigfoot researchers.
all these conspiracy theories. If there's men in black out there, harassing and intimidating these Bigfoot investigators, either I'm a good disseminator of disinformation or something, because
Yes.
no one's ever shown up at my lab.
They don't bother you at all?
They have never bothered
So
me.
you
no.
could, so the idea is you probably work for the CIA.
That's right.
You trained underground to have
That's
this
right.
hypnotic, soothing voice. You get around stoners, convince them Bigfoot exists.
leave little breadcrumb trails.
Right, you're the one with a
You know.
bag of hairs.
I knew it. You're right. That's it.
You're a government agent.
Yeah.
The possibility that Sasquatch predated humans in North America, you brought that up. What about the possibility that there's some sort of a hybrid between humans and Sasquatch? Is that...
Yeah, I think it's very unlikely. I mean, I actually am aware of a couple of interesting stories from Native American sources that suggest that there was the possibility of
So you feel like there's a Yeti, which if may or may not exist, but if it does, is a completely different species. And then there's a Sasquatch. There has been some talk about hybrids, and including the Melba Ketchum DNA results, which she reports to indicate some sort of a human and unknown primate hybrid. How do you feel about the results of those?
I don't hold those in very high regard.
Me neither.
I don't think that her results are that credible, reliable, and certainly her interpretation of the data is highly questionable.
Also, it's important to note that when you say a human Sasquatch hybrid, what you're saying is that someone wasn't just lucky enough to discover a Bigfoot, but they were also able to make love with the Bigfoot.
Well, we're talking about a long time ago, and most likely they didn't even make love with a Bigfoot. They made love with another thing and created Bigfoot. That's
Right.
the idea.
That's her thesis. Yeah,
But
is that,
it's not being looked at with rose-colored glasses.
I mean, even setting any supposed data aside for a moment, just to think about the feasibility of that scenario, you have to have 2 populations that are at least close enough that they're going to produce a viable and a fertile offspring, and yet they're different enough that offspring isn't subsumed into one or the other of the parental population and just diluted back into the gene pool. They remain distinct, and then the crosses have to be frequent enough. The hooking up at
I like how you're hooking up.
That there's a substantial population then that accrues, and that becomes Sasquatch and somehow gets from Europe to North America and other parts of Asia, and relinquishes all material culture and other accoutrements of humanity.
Nope.
And
I agree with Jeff. That makes
kind
sense.
of,
Good point.
Not only that, how big must that thing have been?
Right.
If people are our size, and then there's Sasquatch, which is even bigger.
yeah.
This thing had to be even bigger than Sasquatch. Had sex with a person, made something in the middle, right? Does it work that way? No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Science does not work that way. You know why it doesn't work that way?
Why?
Ligers. Ligers are way bigger than tigers or lions.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, there are. Yeah, you can point to examples that they do. Lions and tigers really aren't good biological species because they do, when the opportunity presents, they do cross and produce viable offspring.
But the viable offsprings are sterile, are they not?
No, ligers. My understanding is that ligers are not sterile.
Really?
You could breed. You could. In fact, one of not Pocatello's, but Eastern Idaho's claim to fame was Liger Town. A couple of unscrupulous individuals that were breeding but not taking good care of them. And all heck broke loose when they showed up outside of a school playground.
The Ligers did?
Yeah. And in fact, they found well-beaten paths where they were getting out on a regular basis before they were finally discovered. And yeah, it was pretty. But that's an interesting possible scenario. Now, I started to mention that there's a couple of Native American accounts that suggest, there's always been this theme of abduction, of the the Sasquatch abducting human females. But the only two that I'm aware of upon which I can base any evaluation reported that there was a pregnancy, there was a birth, but the individual grew very rapidly, very sickly, and died, and was stunted mentally, and died before reaching teen years, suggesting it wasn't viable and probably wouldn't have been fertile.
And this was an abduction.
Yeah.
So Bigfoot abducted a Native American woman, made love to her, brought her back, and she had a baby that died. Why'd he bring her back?
Or she got away, or whatever.
Maybe she was annoying.
Yeah.
Maybe Bigfoot thought it'd be really cool. It's like a lot of hookups. You build it up in your mind, and then you get together with her and the reality sets in.
Yeah.
Maybe she's annoying.
Should have stuck with Bigfoot.
I mean, they sound like just so stories, but we have some precedent. Baruti Galdicus, the orangutan lady, researcher, she in her book Reflections of Eden recounts an instance where at a provisioning station her native assistant was accosted by a young male orangutan who completed the deed. And but he was a rehabituated or a repatriated, I guess you'd say, rehabilitated. I'm not sure what the proper term is there. One that had been confiscated and then raised and trained to return to the woods. So it had some contact with humans previously. But the point simply being is that scenario is not completely out of the question.
Right.
The question is, what's the probability of there being a successful impregnation between two different species? Now,
I've never. Can I just stop you?
Yeah.
It seems like if an orangutan had made love to a woman, that I would have heard of that by now, and you would have too.
I don't think so. There's that lady in Connecticut that was almost definitely sleeping with her chimp. She was giving it wine and Xanax and slept in the bed with her. I was very jealous of her.
I knew about that.
She was probably having sex with that thing.
But this is different from being on an expedition and having an orangutan barrel out of the forest and fuck you.
Yeah, but I think it's probably pretty standard for orangutans. They're bigger, we're smaller, they fuck us.
It's not standard.
I think that's what they do when they're horny. I don't think they really think about it.
There would be a blog dedicated to it at least.
Nah, just not enough contact with people with cell phones that live.
You can tell this was a Pandora's box, wasn't it?
This whole show is a Pandora's box. Sorry, I apologize for that. The Jane Goodall quote, boy, when Jane Goodall came out and said that she believes 100% that Sasquatch is a real animal, did you go, yes? You must have been so pumped.
Well, I followed up and tried to see if she would read my book manuscript and possibly endorse it, which she did. So the cover of my book boasts an endorsement from Dr. Goodall. So
but have you spoken with her?
I have,
about this?
A couple of times.
What's her number one thing that she locks onto as far as proof?
Well, one of the things that really impressed her was the accounts by Native Americans that she's come to become acquainted with, and the fact that they've had these encounters and that they know that their oral traditions are so deep rooted about interactions and encounters with these creatures, that they're part of the real landscape, as well as as with so many animals. The Native American stories often are very metaphorical, very like Aesop's fables. They convey morals and so forth, and so they're oftentimes the animals that are given anthropomorphic characteristics or supernatural characteristics. But that doesn't change the fact that the clever and trickster coyote is based on a real species of animal.
Yeah.
So the wild man of the woods is probably the same.
What does Jane Goodall think of this footage?
I haven't had that opportunity. Our conversations have always been very brief. Unfortunately, we haven't had the opportunity to sit down and speak at any great length. But so I don't know what she would say about the footage.
What was your background before you became intoxicated with the Bigfoot legend?
Right. Well, my training is in anatomical sciences with an emphasis in physical anthropology. So much of my day is spent teaching human gross anatomy, full body dissection lab course to health professions programs. So, I've been involved with the dissection of hundreds and hundreds of human
He
bodies.
teaches doctors about anatomy.
Machinery inside and out. My research revolves around the evolution of human adaptations, particularly those for walking on two legs. And more specifically, the interpretation of foot form and function as it relates to bipedalism and arboreality and other primates like the great apes and monkeys.
You're living in Washington State? Is that where you live?
Idaho.
Idaho.
The state of Idaho.
Okay.
I teach at Idaho State University.
Nice and woodsy out there, right?
Well, Pocatello is kind of plunked there on the edge of the sagebrush steppe, so we have to go a little ways to get to the woodsy, but there's lots of wild country. We're just 2 hours away from the Tetons in Yellowstone National Park, and Uintas are just south of us, so there's some real prime territory. Yeah.
So you can go squatching pretty close to your house.
Sure, can.
Do you do that?
I've gone. I go out with a colleague, John Mainzinski, is a wildlife consultant and ethnobotanist, and we've done a lot of work in western Wyoming together. And for a number of years, we've spent at least a month at a time in the field looking for trace evidence and trying to get DNA by various means.
Would you say that you spend more time dissecting human bodies or hunting for Bigfoot?
Probably dissecting human bodies, yeah.
But Bigfoot's really fun, and dissecting bodies get boring after a while, right?
Well, no, I never lose that. It has a certain novelty to it each and every year. I mean, every body's a little different, and sharing that experience, it's a real unique opportunity for students to have that very intimate experience of dismantling that marvelous machine that's the human body. So it never really gets old.
For the record, just for the show, would you look at me and tell me exactly who you are and what your credentials are?
Yeah. My name is Jeff Meldrum. I'm a professor of anatomy and anthropology at Idaho State University. I teach primarily anatomy and research the evolution of human bipedalism.
I hope you're right.
Me too.
I'm
right.
seriously rooting for you. There's not a lot of subjects that I really hope are true, but Bigfoot, man, for me, it has always been the one. UFOs, I'm pretty sure there's life out there. Whether or not it's visited us, excuse me, whether or not it's visited us, I'm sort of...
I don't know what to say. Like at this point, Joe Rogan has gone full on. There is no Bigfoot, and they don't exist, and very unfortunate for someone who alleges they had such a passionate past about it to not have really given a good run for its money. Like, what expeditions has he done? What has he done to come out? So that's what we do. We take people out and we show them Sasquatch, or they live interact with Sasquatch, or they see significant evidence, or they just learn about the wilderness and really have a good time out there in the Rocky Mountains of Canada, which is where my expeditions are. Thank you very much for tuning into the podcast. And Kyle will be back next week. Yeah, and although Joe Rogan will never hear this, I am grateful that he did that interview with Jeff Meldrum. I think it was very well done. Anybody who is in the arena of the discovery process for Sasquatch, Bigfoot, whatever you want to call it, should be very grateful for Jeff Meldrum and the hard work that he's done and put into this. I'm immensely grateful that we have that man. Gemstones like Dr. John Bitternagel, Jeff Meldrum, even Bob Gimlin are very, very rare. Amazing, incredible men. These are men that I have actually met and spent time with, and just nothing but respect and admirations for these great men that work hard to move this discovery forward. That generation just perhaps above me, and working on myself personally, making sure that we have a generation behind us that keeps this discovery process moving forward, which is going to happen. The discovery's coming, and then Joe Rogan can go apologize to everybody for the mannerism in which he lost his way. So take care for now. See you very soon.